So good evening. I'm Liz O'Reilly. I must not have been in the room when they voted who to be the opening person. So I'm the Deputy Secretary for Public Works at DGS, which means I'm in charge of building things for the Commonwealth, which is a thrill beyond words. So there's some very talented people here, so we're going to try to stick to the agenda and talk about what we're building, why we're building it, where we're building it, how much we're building it, and when we're going to build it, so that you guys can leave here knowing when the backhoes are going to be making noise. They're actually already probably making noise. So at any point in time, just blurt out questions. You can blurt them out and then we have a Q&A at the end. But if you're like me, you'll forget the question by the time we get to the end. So blurt it out when it comes into your head. And we've got people from the city, people from PHMC, we got the architect who's going to run through and show you all the pretty pictures. So without further ado, I will turn it over to David Carmichael. Mayor. Good. Just got started. Yeah, it's right in front. You have to turn it on and it changes the sound.
Okay. Does that work?
Is it turning green?
Yep. It's turning green. I can hear myself. All right. Thank you, Liz. I'm David Carmichael. I'm the state archivist. And we're going to try to advance the slide here. There we go. That's the current building. I think most of you have seen the current building and know what it looks like. So let's talk about it. Let's see if we can get it go. Okay. Many years ago, I introduced myself to a lady. And I said, I'm an archivist. And she got all excited. She's like, an archivist? I've never met an archivist. What is it? And that was early in my career, and that still happens to me today. What's an archivist? And I feel that way when we talk about what's the state archives, what in the world are we? And I like to describe the state archives as the Commonwealth's safe deposit box. A lot of people don't have safe deposit boxes anymore, but most of us know what they are. And you don't try to put every record that you own in your safe deposit box. You put the stuff that you really need to protect and want to keep safe. And that's what the State Archives does. The Commonwealth produces millions of documents, and the stuff that we really, really, really want to keep safe forever, we put in the State Archives. So that means we have hugely historical records, like William Penn's Charter of 1681. This is the very document that Charles II of England gave to William Penn to establish Pennsylvania as a Commonwealth, or as a colony at that time, and then became a state from there. It means that we have about 1 million photographs and maps of Pennsylvania that talk about the whole history of Pennsylvania. So we have hugely historical records. The other thing you put in a safe deposit box is the stuff that protects you legally. And so the archives does that as well. We handle the records that protect us legally. So whenever the Commonwealth buys a piece of property, the deed is supposed to be filed in the archives so that we can keep it forever and protect it. We have every act of the state legislature, from the Great Law, which was our first law in 1682, up to the present. Here is an example of one of them. In 1780, Pennsylvania passed an act for the gradual abolition of slavery. This was an amendment to that act that happened 8 years later. We have every law that has been passed, at least every one that has survived. Before there was an archives, we can't say it. Sometimes things disappeared, but today we have them all. And so we protect the things that protect the Commonwealth and its residents legally. So you might think that we just collect things that relate to famous people and famous events. But that's not exactly true. We have a lot of things that relate to famous people and famous events. We have a lot of records about people like us, the ordinary people who go to work every day and come home every night. We have census records, we have birth records, death records, we have diaries, we have letters, records of ordinary people, and not just the famous and the famous events. So that brings me to the new building. If you know our current building, you saw the picture there already. It was designed in the late 50s, early 60s, and built in the mid-60s, opened in the which it was built. It's a beautiful building, but it's a tall, marble, white monolith, windowless tower. And windowless is okay. Every archives has a portion at least that is windowless. You have to have that to protect the records. That's the safe deposit box. But in the 50s and 60s, that's where it stopped. It's going to be this very intimidating building. And at that time, if you wanted to do research, you had to have a letter of introduction from a scholar. And quite frankly, I'll just say this. When that building opened, it was catering to white men who were writing about white men for white men. And I have nothing against white men, because I am one, obviously. But that's not who Pennsylvania is entirely. And so the building at that time reflected its era, and that's a good thing. Our building is also going to reflect our era. Move on from that. This is Pennsylvania today. It's what Pennsylvania was in the 60s, but historians didn't recognize it the same way we do today. And when we think about our new building, we think of a plethora of people. We think of all kinds of different people, diversity in people, and we want this building to welcome all of them. We don't want it to be an intimidating white windowless tower. We want it to be an open, welcoming, friendly place for people to come. And so I'm hoping when you see the pictures in just a second that you will see that it's a welcoming environment. What we're trying to do is train people to protect their own records. We can't protect everything, so we can train people to protect records. We want to bring in young people and senior citizens and everybody in between to learn how to digitize records and how to protect them by digitizing them. We are very cutting edge in our technology, and this building is going to reflect that. And so this building ultimately is your building. It houses your records. I don't own those records. They belong to the people of the Commonwealth. And so I hope when you see the pictures now, you will see that we are trying to design something that you will want to come into and spend time in, and just gather there and learn about your own history and contribute to your own history. So thank you. Daniel?
I am Daniel Podzak with Lieutenant. We are the architect of record under contract with DGS for the design of the archives. But I must mention we are part of a team. We have a partner for Minneapolis, HGA, Hamill, Green, and Aberson, which is a national firm that specializes in archives and museum-type facilities. This is a very, very special building that requires a level of expertise, so that when DGS initially selected the team, we put together a team that brought to Pennsylvania the very best nationally in talent for this type of facility. So I am technically not the architect of record unless something goes wrong, right, Liz?
No, okay. Sure.
Whatever. First one to do is look at the site. This is our site for the archive. 6th Street is here, somewhere off the map up in the ceiling at the Camp Curtin Y. The other important thing we show you is the federal courthouse site, which is kind of on a parallel path with the archives that we intend to be done first. The site is about 3.5 acres. It's an L-shaped site bounded by 6th Street on the west, North 7th Street on the east, Hamilton on the north, and then Clinton and Harris on the south. This is just an engineering drawing of the current conditions of the site. Late last summer there was a contract which removed the 5 remaining structures on the site. Currently there is activity in the site. There's a contractor removing all of the underground utilities because we are closing a number of streets. Cotton Street will be closed from Hamilton to Harris Street. Clinton is being closed from 6th to Wallace, and Wallace from Clinton back up to Hamilton Street. In the very near future, the utility companies, PP&L, Verizon, and Comcast will begin removing their underground utilities. Sometime in the spring, they'll be installing a duct bank, which is an underground system of conduits to take some of the utilities on the perimeter of the site and put them underground. The only remaining structure on the site is the American Legion, which the Commonwealth has acquired. The Legion will be vacating sometime at the end of the year, shortly thereafter. This building will be demolished as part of the construction of the new building. Now, an archives facility is David said, in the perfect world is a windowless building. When you're storing records, there's things that are enemies of the records. Number one is light. Number two is water. And ironically, water is a two-way street. Too much water is too bad, it's not good. Not enough water is equally as bad. The records need, particularly paper records, a certain amount of humidity in a very controlled environment to maintain their longevity. So the other challenge with an archives facility is you're storing the records in the proper environment, and as David said, we want the building to be inviting because it's a people space for both the staff and the public to come to view the records. So as I'll go through the design, I'll show you how we're accomplishing these two competing functions. This is an artistic rendering of our site plan. Again, 6th Street, 7th Street, Hamilton, Harris, the Legion is sitting down here. The building will occupy the northwest corner of the site. The big block here that we're calling A, if you think of the archive storage and you laid it on the ground and chopped it up and you restacked it, it would be this piece but much bigger because part of the goal of the Commonwealth is that this facility will house records well into the future. One of the issues with the current facility is that they're very close to being out of space. The front portion here, which is the B on the drawing, is the staff and public space, which I have some artistic renderings of. There will be a very significant public plaza down in the corner of Harris and Hamilton Street with a series of crisscrossing walks, the main promenade that leads up to the entry, landscaping along the street. There will be public parking for 29 patrons who will use the archives. We're also creating 8 spaces along Wallace Street, primarily for the residents that will remain here so that there's public off-street parking. We're actually making the pavement wider than it is now so that you're not parking in the cartway. Clinton Street will become one-way in. There is a garage underneath the facility for the staff parking. This is the main entry here. Then off of 7th Street is the receiving. Records come in periodically with trailer trucks, so the receiving's got to come in a full trailer truck. This is designed to get the truck off the street, out of the travel lanes, and move it into the dock. Another important part of our archives is that it has a very, very sophisticated mechanical system. There is an exterior mechanical corridor here to the south side of the building, but it has a 20-foot high wall around it to screen that equipment from the public and the neighbors. There's also a drop-off at the front, pull-off here for patrons to come to the main entry. So the building is elevated slightly from the street. It's up about 3 feet from 6th Street by these stairs. There's also stairs that lead down to the plaza, and then the accessible route would be one of these paths. And the entrance is actually tucked back into this alcove. This is the model. It's a little earlier in the project, but it still gives you a good visual. North 6th Street here, Harris, 7th Street, remaining row homes, the school. This is the archives. Again, the big block here, which is largely windowless, but there are some windows, I'll get into that, for the archival storage. This is the public space. This portion of the buildings, when we get to the renders, is actually a glass box. And there's kind of a challenge there. We wanted it to be a glass box so that it was very open and inviting, both during the day and night. But then you have the issue of the light getting into the record. So the glass box is surrounded by a solar shade, which the model represents here, which will control solar penetration into the building. And the piece on the diagonal here is primarily the staff offices are. Again, the very nice public plaza leading down to the corner of Harris and 6th Street. In the back, you can kind of see the courtyard for the mechanical equipment. This is the view of the model, almost straight on from the vacant lot on the other side of 6th Street. Again, you're seeing the public sector with the solar shade around the glass box. In the back, you see the archival facility. The building is technically 4 levels. We're in the back of the site. The site drops off about 28 feet from 6th to 7th Street. So in the back of the site, there are 4 levels above grade, but as the grade rises, there's only 3 levels. And the actual public staff is a 2-level structure. We're very cognizant of keeping it at a scale that relates to other buildings in the neighborhood. We didn't want to put the very large part of the structure up on the street. A view from the northeast. This is North 7th Street. I believe this is the Good Time Ice. You're seeing it's what we call Section A, the archival storage. Around the corner is the mechanical yard and the receiving. One more view looking at Hamilton Street. This, as I mentioned, is a largely windowless facade because of the function, but there are people spaces up towards the front where the staff process the records and reformat them. So there are windows here. The other thing the model doesn't represent is that the building will be clad in brick, and this facade will have some pattern ornamentation to the brick, so it has a more broken down scale as opposed to just a big windowless box. Now the renderings. This is a rendering looking from the plaza at the main entry. Again, the main entry is tucked back in the alcove. Primary access off of 6th Street off the planter, or behind the planter, excuse me. Access down to the plaza, and then the accessible route is around through the landscaping and up the ramp. What you see here is the 2-story glass box. We have an interior rendering in the public space. This is actually very nice, well-lit natural space for what we call self-service. There are basically 2 ways to look at records in the archives. One is self-service, where you can view a digitized record on a computer. They're currently using microfilm, but I believe that's almost all gone, David, since that technology has gone away. Then you can actually request original records. You will not get the charter. But you can get some pretty cool things. You can get photographs. Like I did a project for the PA Turnpike, and we were looking for historical photographs. The archives had, I believe, 4,000 photographs of the construction of the turnpike. Those are all available to anyone, the average citizen. You can get railroad maps. PA was built by the railroad. They have railroad maps that are 8-10 feet long. They actually keep in little tubes. They call them snake coffins. But those are available upon request in the original documents area of the facility. A view from 6th Street. Again, the solar screen around the public staff space. This zone here is the 2-story high space I was talking about, which is self-service. Where the louvers and the solar screen become more intense, and the north side is where the original documents room is. That was done again to keep the amount of solar penetration at a minimum to the building, but yet keep the building open and light. And you can kind of see the archival section poking above the roof of the front, and then staff offices here in the corner. One last exterior view before we go to the interior. This is up on the other side of Hamilton Street, looking down towards 7th Street. You see the grade is falling off. You see the archival block here. The public space, again, original documents behind the more intense solar louver, then the more open part is the self-service. Okay, interior. This is the view at what we call the front desk. This is what you would see directly upon entering the building. There'll be staff here to help patrons. Back on the seat area, this is what we call the video wall. We're working on an interactive video which will be available to look at various historical aspects that are programmed into the video wall. You're seeing kind of the corner of the self-service. It's a 2-story high, well-lit space. And I believe this is a better view. This is looking with your back to the south side through two-story self-service space. In the back behind this glass wall is the original documents room. And it's separated from the self-service because, again, you're looking at original documents, which can be very fragile. So that room is contained with a more strictly controlled environment. And then one last view of the exterior, again from 6th Street. Any questions? Yes?
What's your estimate on how much storage that we're going to have on top? Once we get everything into the new building, going forward, adding records, how much until we go again? Yeah,
25 years is the projection. 30? 35, excuse me.
What's the construction time frame? Is it a year or is it 18 months?
We're predicting about 24 months. If all goes to plan, the project will be bid in the late first quarter of 2019. Contracts will be awarded and construction will start probably late July and August.
When the construction manager or firm is deciding, how will, and I take it they normally take control of the property from beginning to end. How will residents issue any concerns or problems? Will there be a single point of contact that all questions and concerns can be answered?
That is the detail we're working on. Bethesda recently completed several projects for the Philadelphia Free Library in much more heavily populated areas. And there we had a single point of contact that the citizens groups could approach the construction team to issue concerns. And I believe we'll probably have something similar structure for this project.
So the resident won't be dealing with the state per se, they'll be dealing with the construction manager or firm that actually owns that site during construction.
Yes, the way state projects are structured, there are separate prime contracts. The general contractor is the lead contractor. He would be assigned that role as the liaison with the community.
Is any of this construction on weekend usage or nighttime usage, or is it pretty much done throughout the day?
It's pretty much during the normal construction schedule, which is Monday through Friday, 7 to 5 p.m., 6 to 5 p.m. There may be a utility tie-in that has got to be done off hours. Typically with this project, since it's an open, clean site, the construction industry, they don't like to work night or weekends, so they're going to drive basically a normal working schedule.
For utility disruptions, whatever they are, water connections or electric or whatever it is, or traffic flows, there be a construction schedule that a resident will know, hey, I'm going to be impacted by this or that, this traffic pattern, this, am I assuming that?
Yes, DGS requires the general contractor, which is the lead contractor, to have what we call a critical path, very detailed schedule, start to finish.
Is that open to the resident if he wants to know if his property is right along or adjacent, that he'll know whether or not there's going to be a disruption over
Yes.
a week or just a day?
Yep.
Or whatever?
We can post the CPM, now the CPM is changes, but we can post, we can have, to the extent that we want it, we'll put it in the bid documents that says, okay, we need a 2-week look ahead, and then we can post it on our website so you guys know what's coming. To echo Daniel's, we try very hard not to do night work, because it just, the 2-year duration is premised upon 7 to 4, 4:30 work. No weekend work, because they can get overtime, and we don't want to be doing that. So I don't think there's any intention to do night or weekend work. Again, the utility flip over can be a little tricky, especially the electrical and the gas.
Actually, UGI relocated gas lines, and we had them stub and cap a T to the site. So, and I think they put a valve in too, so that's already taken care of.
So just to clarify one of your questions, so DGS DGS, my people, my team will manage the project. We're not bringing in a construction manager, we do that. So we're not adding that additional cost to the project.
But if there's an issue on
If there's an
something-
issue, we will designate the lead contractor, the general contractor will have a person identified, and then we will also identify, to the extent that the problem is with the contractor, we will identify a Commonwealth employee who will be directly responsible and open to, and since the contractors work for DGS, that person will be able to speak directly to the contractors with concerns and resolve them.
Will the residents be given any kind of schedule when the construction starts? Because I live right at Granite and 6th.
Okay?
So I'm trying to figure out how, if I'm going to be impacted as far as parking. I think he did bring up something about Wallace, and there were so many parking sites at Wallace, and
Yep.
but is that for the residents, or is that for?
Let us bring up that site map. And we'll go into the parking, because the parking is key, and the permanent parking when we're done is a hot point too.
What I had mentioned is,
So went back, auto.
there we go. Along Wallace Street, there are 5 residents remaining, 4 occupied. The project will create 8 parking spaces for those residents to park when the project is complete. During construction, I'll be honest, I don't know how they worked out what kind of parking is available around the site. It's going to be a very active site during construction.
And I would add one of those parking spots on Wallace Street, which is, our intention is that they're obviously there for public use, they will be convenient for the residents. I think we need to work out with the city what the parameters are. I don't think that they can be designated spots per se, but the intention is to provide parking, that's publicly available. And we're looking into permitting.
So could one assume, whatever your relationship is with the city, that you, right now, those parking spaces along the 6th Street corridor are not going to get redesignated as metered parking or any of that type of thing because it's a state, this is a state-owned property.
The city will actually own those streets and those parking spaces at the end of the project.
We can answer that and say there's no plans to put meters on the parking at all. And we are looking at potentially creating a residential parking district to designate those for people who live in the area, just like we do in other parts of the city.
The parallel parking on both sides of 6th Street will remain when the project's finished. Hopefully the pavement will be redone, at least the length of the block that the project occupies, but there's no plans to decrease the carway, which would get rid of parallel parking.
My concern was the designated, because I just found out about the dog park that's going to be right directly in back of my property. So there's going to be needed parking for those people that's coming to the park, along with the residential parking. So that's why I was wondering, are we giving designated places to park because we're going to be in competition with the dog
Right.
park?
That would be the advantage of having a residential permit area, and that's how it works in other parts of the city. So it would be permit parking designated for residents at certain times, and you'd be able to get the permit based on your address. So we have to work that out, but we're going to have, ultimately when this is done, more parking than we currently have. And the dog park is temporary. It's not a permanent fixture. And it's something that we're also monitoring to see how well it works.
Can I ask
I
another
have a question.
question?
In the plans, I kind of noticed between that one right there, the state archives and the federal courthouse, between Clinton and Harris, was there some reason why that was not consumed with the other properties that?
This section here?
Yes.
Can I be honest about it? The selling price was beyond the Commonwealth's needs.
So
So are you saying for this project, not for the plan, there won't be any more land acquisitions or limited zoning actions?
That's correct.
Okay, with this project.
None for property.
That
And
brings us-
the other reason too is there was an evaluation done, the project fits comfortably on the L-shaped site.
Now, with federal, they're starting their, I guess, their utility construction sometime early next year. And usually utility construction is always the first thing that you land. Can I assume that whatever coordination, that whatever you put in on utilities on 6th Street is going to suffice to some measure for the federal courthouse if they have to do something on 6th Street? Or is that something still to get worked out? What I'm saying is,
Right, so.
whatever you have finished, when the federal courthouse comes in, are they going to redo what you have finished?
No.
And will that cause another?
To answer your question, we have met with that team, and the biggest impact utilities is the communications and power. And to answer your question, we will not be building something and having them undo it 2 months later.
Right.
That's going to work out.
Right.
I have a question because
The streets are older streets, and properties that have been in that area before had an issue with the utility company coming in and doing some work. They broke a water line, and normally your homeowner's insurance only covers you from the curb to your property, but that little portion of the street where it actually runs the main water line that connects to your property, now I'll say we incurred a $4,000 bill to repair. Who's going to be responsible for that? Because they are older streets, and I'm sure with the construction, with the trucks, the weight of them, who's going to bear the responsibility if something breaks there to repair that?
So if it's in the street, our contractors bring performance bonds, so they're covered with insurance and bonds.
Now, is that going to be true with the city to make sure? Because in the city of Harrisburg, you can't get an additional insurance just to cover you from the main line to your property. Like some suburbs you can. For a period of time, the city did offer it, but in this case, because there's going to be a lot of construction going on, and we know the city has a lot of old pipes and things as far as that. We would like to know, who's really going to cover that? Is it going to be in writing? You're seeing it now, but there was an issue back and forth with UTI of doing some work. They disturbed the pipe, an older pipe, but they did not, to them, they didn't do it. The city said they didn't do it, so now it's left to the residents.
I can tell you that we do this a lot. We will have what we call a limit of contract. So when that line is on the drawings, anything that happens inside that line, our contractors are responsible for.
Okay, but your lines are,
That's not the line.
okay, what are the lines?
Go to the. All right, so it'll be something like this. And to the extent that we are going to own that street, to the extent that this is going to come along here, we will encompass that street for our construction. We're going to work with the city about closing the streets, but there will be a line of limit of contract that encompasses those streets that we're working on. It's not going to go down here, and it probably won't go to the other side of Harris, because we're going to be on the inside of that. But to the extent that we're doing work on Wallace and here, that's going to have, this road is going to have to be in this side of that road is going to be in our contract.
It's actually rebuilt.
Yeah,
That's Wallace Street right here is the main concern because there are residential homes there.
right. So right along here, again, we're working with the city. Everything over here is the homeowners, but everything to the left of this side of the street is going to be in our contract. Because when the dust settles, one of the things we're going to do based on the design part of it, when we talked about right right? So this, we're rebuilding this street, and probably Clinton, because we're gonna have to go in and tear it up during construction, so we own the repaving of that street. And probably, that's what Dana said, I think, although I'm not sure, that we will repave North Street, this portion of North Street.
Sixth Street.
Sixth Street, I'm sorry.
The game plan is to build it all. We don't really have any active work as far as utilities in Sixth Street. There were some water service disconnections. They were done last summer. But the project budget currently includes drilling and repaving 6 from Harris to Hamilton, and Hamilton from 6 down to 7th Street.
We're doing Clinton soon, right?
Well, Clinton will be repaved, yes. Yes. What remains of it?
Is that the answer to your question?
Well, I have another question. This might be very short. I realize that.
Hold on a second, is the microphone with? Oh, okay.
I live on Air Street, so I was wondering, maybe we should start looking to move. I live at 632 Air Street.
I don't know. Is the federal courthouse taking your property? I don't understand why you would move. Help me understand why you would
There's
move.
only 4 houses on that lot, so I don't know or if they want to tear the houses down.
We're not touching, we're done. We're done taking. So I don't know, I can't speak for the federal courthouse, but we're not taking any more property. We're done. Did the federal government say anything about it?
No.
Okay.
I didn't know what they were going to do since it was 4 houses on that lot. I didn't know.
I don't think so. I can't speak for the federal, God knows I can't speak for the federal government, but for the state government, enjoy your home. We're done.
Are you gonna put in bigger pipes, bigger water line pipes in the corridor there?
In here? No, there's actually a 6-inch main.
So it's just exchanging kind.
Well, the new building's actually fed off of a much larger main that's out on 7th Street.
So the water pressure issues are not going to be anything among any of the residents or anything like
Correct.
that? Okay.
My question has sort of been answered. I was wondering, I know that you're dealing with 3 acres, and I know you're dealing with 26th and 7th Street, Harrison, Hamilton. My question was going to be, and I think you just answered it, will there be any more buildings along 6th Street that will be impacted?
I can tell you, Dan took most of my stuff, which is fine. He's better at it than I am. The one question no one's asked, so I'll answer it, is we have $50 million to award construction contracts, 50. So again, we're gonna put the building part of this, which is actually, well, the building phase of it, because you would think it would be phase 3, but it isn't. But at any rate, we're gonna put the building part of it out this spring. So there won't be any, other than the site utility work that we're doing, we're not gonna do anything else to disrupt the neighborhood until we start construction in the summer of 2019. And then, construction, so the 2-week look ahead that we talked about, the schedule, will show primarily what they'll do, because it's pretty much a vacant site, they're gonna go in and start grading, so you'll see backhoes and dirt. And there'll be the wham when they back up the backhoe during the day.
My concern is, will we be notified? If so much stuff has been happening, when Hamilton School closed down and they reopened again, I really think that residents should have been notified that the school was going to be open back, what type of school it's going to be. The dog park. I got a paper one day pushed to my door that there was going to be a dog park. And to find out later, it's right in the back of my house. So I don't think we're notified of what's going on in our neighborhood, being residents and taxpaying citizens. And that's why
look ahead, I will stand here and tell you I'm happy to come back and have these town halls during construction.
That'd be a good idea.
Absolutely, absolutely. Guess what? You guys pay my salary, so I'm happy to do that.
Where's all the parking going to be?
The parking for the building?
Well, the archives.
Let me just, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Okay.
Parking for the, after construction or parking during construction, or both?
Both.
I knew we were gonna get there eventually. Both.
As far as after construction, the archives has roughly 30 employees. As I mentioned, there is an underground garage that accommodates, I believe, 39. The archives averages 12 to 20 people a day, David. There's parking for 29 here. It's anticipated a lot of the patrons may come by public transportation. Parking during the construction, we've got to develop a logistics plan. Most likely, the south half of the site will be used for construction parking.
So you can expect to see construction trailers. So we have 4 primes, probably 4 trailers. One of the things we'll figure out is whether they go double tiered or whether they go side by side. Down there to allow us the room to actually build the building. And from a visual standpoint, we anticipate right now an 8-foot construction fence around the site.
Have one comment to that?
Yep.
Just a comment to that. We are a very low impact agency. We serve online, we serve about 6 million people a year, but they don't come to our building. And so we do get about 11 to 15, maybe 20 people a day. If we have a special event, we might get more people for a special event, but we will have parking for all of them in our area. So, one of our goals is not to impact parking around the building.
What are you going to do about open house when such things?
We're going to have that.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, yes. And I will also add to that we do get trucks once in a while. Most of our trucks are just box trucks, and we don't get them frequently. Once in a great while, we'll get a semi. But, you're coming down 7th to the loading dock in the back, that's it. And it really is very rare. We might have that happen 5 times a year, 4 or 5 times a year. So, again, that should not be a huge impact.
What about roadway disruptions?
I can't answer those.
What was the question?
During construction.
Yes, go on.
Roadway construction during construction.
As I mentioned, the general contractor is the lead contractor for the site. One of the DGS contractual requirements is that they develop a site access plan, which would be worked out in advance and agreed to by DGS. I'm sure it's something you can.
Oh, we're happy to post that. Yep. Where they're going to access the site, where the tractor trailers are going to be, how they're going to get deliveries. That's all part of the schedule, and we'll ask for a graphic representation of that. Can we'll get the mayor, we're not ending the questions, but we want to get the mayor and PHMC up again. So.
Yeah, let me just say thank you all for coming out. There have been some terrific questions already, and that's the purpose of this meeting, is to have good communication. I just wanted to say on a personal note that I do know what an archivist is and what an archivist can do, because I grew up the son of the Maryland State Archivist, and my earliest memories are playing with matchbox cars on the floor of the Maryland State Archives in Annapolis, all those nice long corridors made for big runs. And at that point, they had the old archives in Maryland, and it had the old, gated elevators and things that made it really interesting as a child. But when I was growing up, they built a new Maryland State Archives building. They kept it in Annapolis, and that's part of the reason I knew we could do this here in Harrisburg. And I want to especially thank Governor Wolf and Secretary Doppler for keeping the archives in the city, because at one point there was talk of leaving the city, and I think it's really important that we have these founding documents here. I also want to say, good news, while we were sitting here, the Senate just passed the bill to help Harrisburg. It passed 48 to 1, and that's really good, because it means that a lot of the investment and development that we're seeing in the city is going to continue. this room. The city helped finance this with our CDBG dollars, and it's turned into a really nice community room. The other thing that excites me about and I'll also say that already we're starting to get inquiries from developers. Nothing firm yet, but there's been talk of additional housing development in the corridor and additional commercial development in the corridor. So we'll keep you posted if those come. The other thing which is important about this project, which hasn't been mentioned, which I would say, is that it is going to, through a partnership with the city, it will house the city's document collection, which currently doesn't have a home and is sort of crumbling due to neglect and poor climate and other conditions. So a lot of critical records and maps and photographs all related to the founding of the city are going to be available now really for the first time in decades, because right now they're inaccessible to the public. So you'll be able to research when your house was built and perhaps who lived there and how it's changed over time, as well as all of our neighborhoods and churches and histories. So there's going to be an active connection to Harrisburg, which I think will really, really benefit us and makes me particularly excited about this project. So I like the designs that we're seeing here tonight. I appreciate the process, which I think is really strived hard to bring people into the discussion, and I'm glad that so many people have come out tonight. So thank you.
Andrea, you're up.
Right.
Thank you. I'm Andrea Lowry. I'm the Executive Director for the Pennsylvania Historical Museum Commission, and the State Archives is one of our bureaus, which is why I'm standing up here. I want to thank Jamie and Harvey and the staff at the Y, and he's not in the room right now, for having us. This was really gracious of them to host us this evening. And I also want to thank the city for their help and support. We're really excited about being in the city and helping revitalize this section of the city. And I want to thank DGS, Liz, and Kurt, and Julia, and everyone who's helped make this possible. And Wayne and Jeff have been phenomenally helpful in helping us work out what we need to do as far as the city goes. But most of all, I want to thank the residents who are coming. You guys really are our neighbors, and we're excited about being part of their community. And it's really important to me that we get to know you guys, that we are good neighbors, that we are a community asset. I think that historically as a state, we have been sort of removed from communities, and we actually rely on you guys to be, really a part of what we do. We're preserving your records, we are your neighbors, and we want to have a good relationship with you. So I hope that I get to know every one of you. Okay, so with that, we'll take any additional questions tonight.
What happens to the old time?
The old tower. Well, or do you want to take it? You want me to take it? I can take it. Okay. It's going to stay in place. It was put on the National Register in 2014. It's part of the same building as the now building at the State Archives. The State Museum. So we're looking at how to reuse that building. We're going to be doing a feasibility study to find out what the best and highest use is. Because visibly built this tower, as you've heard, storage tends to be a better use for it than human occupation. So we are talking to other agencies to see if there are partnering opportunities, but it will stay in place.
And the museum piece stays.
The museum piece stays, absolutely. We have the director of the State Museum back here, Beth Hager. We've got a lot of exciting plans for what we're hoping to do with that, refurbishing that, and like with the archives, really making it a greater community asset. Anything else?
After this meeting, is there a point of contact person that if you have any additional questions? Email address, telephone number, name?
Sure. I'm happy to serve. So it's my email. I don't have cards because I'm paperless. But LOREILLY at pa.gov. At pa.gov. That's my email. I would tell you my cell phone number. I don't know what it is. I don't call myself. Oh, there you go.
Thank you so much.
There you go, yeah. I was going to volunteer you, Troy, but I didn't want to automatically volunteer. So we're happy. One of the things we do is communicate. We want to communicate openly and give you a 2-week notice, tell you what's coming so that you can plan accordingly. And we're gonna deliver a great project Well, that's part of the 8-foot fence, so we're trying to figure out an 8-foot fence at a minimum and leave it up to the lead contractor. So the general contractor is in charge of the site. So they may hire a security guard, they may put up a higher fence. We don't know yet, but we're going to try to make it really secure because there's going to be some valuable stuff on there. So they are responsible because they truly own the stuff until they turn it over to us. So it's their copper pipe, so they have a vested interest in protecting the site.
And after construction, we're not officially part of the Capitol complex, but we have talked to Capitol Police. They will be doing a few patrols at night just through the area, just to make sure everything is in order. And we'll be tied into the Capitol complex security as well.
I have a dog park question now.
Oh, that's
Sure. Go ahead.
Who's maintaining it?
Okay. So the dog park is being maintained by a neighborhood group called Friends of Midtown. They're a nonprofit organization. They came to the city with a desire, because of all the dogs in the neighborhood, to find a place for a dog park. They eventually reached out to the Vartan Group, which is allowing them to use their property for the dog park. And we've basically set it up as a temporary experiment to see if it could lead to a permanent dog park or two in Harrisburg. There is some talk of, there was a projected dog park as part of the Reservoir Park Master Study. And before we go into planning any types of dog parks, we sort of wanted to see how one might work. But the maintenance and the mowing and the cleanup and all of that is being performed by the nonprofit group Friends of Midtown. And I believe they're going to have a groundbreaking press conference here pretty soon, so it's brand new.
So the fence that they have up now, that's just temporary, right?
I don't know what they have up at the moment because I haven't been by to see it. But
I'll take it there.
okay.
Why not?
Any other questions?
I'm going to assume, same thing is going to occur with the federal courthouse, since this has been such a nice, easy flow meeting, that you can share the nice stuff with the feds and tell them this is how you should do business.
I think that's a great idea, and we will do it. And this has been a model of, I think, exactly how you can do a good meeting. I will encourage that. That's GSA, and that's the federal government, so different branch.
I haven't identified myself, I'm Secretary Topper. I would just share that we've actually had very productive, very active communication with the GSA. We recognize that we were both going to be in the neighborhood doing construction at the same time, and we're really going above and beyond to make sure that we coordinate. And if GSA isn't holding this type of community, trying to do this type of community engagement, we'll be glad to tell them that they ought to. But I have every reason to believe that they will. Yeah.
I just wanted to say that Jeffrey Knight, the planning director of the city of Harrisburg, as part of the review of the federal courthouse, they also agreed to hold a similar meeting to this one to reach out to the community to discuss some of the same issues, the construction impacts, the construction schedule, how it might affect utilities, how it might affect parking. So you should expect a similar meeting. I don't know, they haven't scheduled that yet, so we don't know exactly when or where it'll be, but they will be having a meeting of this type.
Be able to post that on the city's website.
Excuse me?
When they determine the date, can you post that on the
Yes, that will be
city's
posted to
website?
the city's website. It'll be sent out through the various media channels, Facebook, Nextdoor, I believe, Twitter. So we'll be sure to, as soon as we get that information, we'll be sending that out to the community.
Let me ask a question, right? So payback is interesting. So is there a preferred way that we advertise these future meetings for DGS? Facebook or to the city, or like what's the best way to reach out to everybody?
Well, no, there was a letter that was actually posted on the door that we got to notify.
Okay, so
of
if you
this.
sign up, we'll make sure that when we announce it, we'll send it right to your email address, if that helps. And yeah, Andrea went door to door, I think, so. She should have gone around Wings and gotten some candy out of it, right? Took her date.
So everyone who got a letter does have my card. Don't hesitate to call me if you have any questions or concerns. Obviously, we're trying to do one point of contact for the construction project, but as I mentioned, we're your neighbors and I want to get to know you. So don't hesitate to call me.
Good? Anything else? Well, thanks for coming, and I look forward to seeing you again.